We are in September 2023, and I've been keeping an eye on the presidential polling because even though these polls are far from perfect, when you have a lot of polls pointing in the same direction where Dr. Cornel West has considerable support and is rapidly gaining even more as the polls go by, you just know that there's big changes happening with the voting public. Of course, the corporate media isn't being very forthcoming about the very strong numbers for Dr. West. And in fact, I noticed that not a single mainstream news outlet talked about the poll that I'm about to share with you. It's a poll conducted by Fox News on 1,000 voters. And this poll is actually a little bit different from most polls, which usually pit candidates against one another. What this poll did was ask people how open they would be to voting for Cornel West as a third-party presidential candidate. So what the numbers show is that overall, more than a year before the election, 17% of voters are open to voting for Dr. West. And there's some really interesting differences by demographic group, like gender and race. Men are at 22% openness to Dr. West. Women are at 13%. When we look at race, we see that white voters are at 13% and black voters at 32%. And Hispanic voters are not too far behind at 26%. When we get into the partisanship numbers, we can see that 20% of Democrats are open to Dr. West, and so are 12% of Republicans. And here's where it gets really bad for Joe Biden. 19% of Biden's 2020 voters are open to Dr. West. And keep in mind that Biden got around 81.2 million votes. So if you do that math, what's 19% of Biden's 2020 voters? That's like 15 million voters that are saying that they're open to Dr. West. And actually, lots of Trump's 2020 voters are also saying they're open for Dr. West, 12% to be exact. And Trump got 74.2 million votes. So 12% of that is like 9 million people who voted for Trump and are now saying they're open for voting for Dr. West. So if you add that up, you find that Dr. West is already at around 24.4 million voters. And I should say, the poll is actually from back in June, but the pollsters at the aggregator actually delayed in posting the results of this poll. And I think it's pretty clear why. Since these numbers, Fox has actually taken more polls, but they haven't included this question. I suspect it's because they don't want to highlight the fact that not only is Dr. West taking votes from Biden, he's taking votes from Trump. Millions of Biden voters and Trump voters are saying they are open to Dr. West. Of course, the corporate news will never share any of this with you, but I'm pretty sure that these poll results that favor Dr. West so strongly are the reason why they're trying to bring dirt wherever they can find to throw at Dr. West, hoping any of it sticks, like how they keep trying to use Bernie Sanders against Dr. West. They had him go on and say that basically we should just keep doing what we've been doing for decades, which is supporting the Democrats, even though the Democratic Party as a whole refuses to defend the interest of everyday Americans. Bernie actually said that he wants progressives to, quote, demand that the Democratic Party, and not just Biden, have the guts to take on corporate greed and the massive levels of income and wealth inequality that we see today. Well, the problem with that strategy of demanding things from the Democratic Party is that history both from decades in the past and from Bernie's own campaigns, clearly shows that the people do not matter to the Democratic Party. They're not interested in meeting the demands of the people. That's because the Democratic Party is a top-down party. It has a leadership that calls the shots because that leadership owns the party. And it's a leadership that is entirely pro-corporate. They're invested in making sure that income and wealth inequality, those aspects of American life that Bernie talks so much about, what the Democrats want is for those aspects to continue to stay the same. They want income inequality. They want wealth inequality. That's their business model in the Democratic Party. They're not going to change. I think it's pretty clear. If we, the American people, truly want change, we're going to have to pressure the Democratic Party from the outside. And thankfully, we have a great candidate in Dr. West. We just have to keep on pushing and remind ourselves that victory is within our power. The corporate media will obviously just keep attacking Dr. West. They'll keep throwing Bernie out there to defend Biden, and they'll keep trying to convince us that Dr. West is a spoiler candidate. In reality, the polls aren't perfect, but collectively, they are showing that Dr. West is off to an extremely promising start. And that's why the corporate media has been attacking him, while also suppressing the numbers that are very good for Dr. West, like the ones I went over earlier in the video. Let me repeat those numbers. 17% of voters are already open to voting for Dr. West as a third-party candidate, including an astounding 19% of Biden's 2020 voters and 12% of Trump's 2020 voters. So if you run those numbers, you'll see that that's roughly 24 million people ready to vote for Dr. West. That's already 15%. And those 15% can work on turning themselves into 20, 25, 30, 35, and then the truth will be revealed. And that is that it is the Democratic candidate who is the real spoiler. When more of our neighbors see that, we will all win. We will win by electing an incredible human being to the U.S. presidency. Thank you for being engaged and for listening.